Hello and welcome everybody to SDAQ&A presents Good News Fellowship. And our special guest presenter today is Nicki Carleton. How are you, Nicki?
Well, I'm okay. I'm doing fine, considering. It's a beautiful day.
It is a beautiful day. It's raining out here, which has made the
Yeah.
temperature nice and
Oh,
cool inside. And
yeah.
apologies, everyone, massively late today. I can't believe, Nicki, this is the first week that I've started everything half an hour later, for a few
Oh,
reasons. And I thought, wow, I'm going to be early every single show because often I'm a little bit late. But here we are, like 25 minutes late, even
oh,
though we had all this extra time. But hey, there's good reasons. We don't need to go into them. But here we are, and the most
yeah,
important thing is this weekly fellowship that we've got going that has sprung out of SDA Q&A and
yeah.
gathers at this time minus half an hour ago every week. And we've got a lot of people watching. It's
Great.
great to have everybody here today. Um, so I don't think you can see the comments your end, but I will bring them in
No,
as they
thanks.
become pertinent. And we've got Moto Sapien saying, "Hey, I was starting to worry where we were." So yeah,
No.
we're here, and
Mm,
yeah, so it's good to have everyone watching. And today, I thought the topic is pertinent as well. Uh, People have been talking about covenants a lot lately, and talking about the kingdom this
Yeah.
year. And you know what? In
Mm-hmm.
any
Mm-hmm.
time with in
Mm-hmm.
any pretty conversation that leads to that, you've been in the comments and giving some really great ideas and thoughts, and I like that. That's the reason we exist. And this one we've called blood covenants, and
Yeah.
you've had a cheeky little sub kind of comment, a sub title. You know, it's so easy a 3-year-old can understand. It's so complex theologians argue, and I
Yeah.
thought that was great.
Mm-hmm.
So, look, what we're going to do is
Yeah.
just get you to unpack a little bit about what we're going to chat today, and then we're going to hear some wonderful music from Malcolm Clark.
Okay. Ah, Well, welcome everybody. I'm a bit nervous, so I hope this comes across as fairly easy to understand because it is a complex issue. But I love the covenants, and I've loved them for what, 20 years now. So once I looked through everything and read the Bible through the eyes of understanding covenants, it just made so much sense, and it the gospel became easy to me, and I just fell in love with it all over again. So just today I wanted to share about what is the traditional covenant. Um, and so we're gonna it well, I've sort of worked out that it has about 9 steps. So we'll go through those 9 steps, and I'm going to compare. This may seem complicated, but I hope it's not. I'm going to compare 5 different covenants: the traditional covenant that's around the world today, even done in Africa recently, till recently, the exact same steps as the ancient Israelites, the same as David and Jonathan, the same as Abraham made with God. So we're going to do the traditional covenant, then we're going to talk about the old covenant, then we're going to talk about how Jesus fulfilled that, and then we're going to talk about marriage and the new covenant, how they all have exactly the same 9 steps or
Brilliant.
thereabouts.
I love
So,
it. Can't wait.
yeah.
So what we're gonna do is listen to some beautiful music just to calm everything down,
Okay.
and from from Malcolm Clark,
Sure.
and then it'll be over to you. And if you want to start with a prayer after that, well, I did say
Yep.
before that, but let's go to the
Sure.
music
That's
and
all
then
right.
you can pray.
Sure.
Okay, here we go. And thank you, Malcolm Clark. This is a beautiful mellow version of "Break Bread Together."
Oh, wonderful.
Wow. Wasn't that just beautiful? So thank you, Malcolm, for that beautiful rendition of Break Bread Together. Over to you, Nicki.
Well, let's pray. Dear God, um, well, we're breaking bread here together. We're breaking your word open. And I pray that it'll feed us and nourish us. And at the same time, you'll teach us new things with the power of your Holy Spirit, whispering to our hearts, inspiring us and encouraging us. So I pray that you will bless my words and this understanding of covenants, and that we'll see you in a completely different light. So, God, thank you. And I just pray for your Holy Spirit to bless us right now in Jesus' name. Amen. Wow. I feel really close to the screen. I'm so sorry. If my face is right there, I'm quite scared. Sorry about that. Okay, so
That's
I'm
right. It's
nervous.
good. It's good.
Okay, fine. Um, so I'm in bed because I'm just I just lie around a lot. So yeah, let's just have a nice chat together about the covenants. A serious topic, really. So yeah, I love it. As I said before, I just fell in love with it. The concept, because I myself am a kinesthetic learner and I love parables and I love being able to grasp concepts in pictures and by doing and touching and feeling and rather than just intellectually. So the covenant is purely a parable of something so deep and mystical, and it's probably supremely hard for us to understand because it is a mystery and it is between God and Jesus. And these things are so in the background that we don't fully comprehend what they are. So he had to explain it through using all of these parables, um, and to show what was coming in the future. And that's such a beautiful thing. I really love that, that he speaks to people simply, even if it's not written down clearly in the written word. It's inspiring in all its creativity. So yeah, um, I like to think of the covenant and the gospel as a bunch of keys, and we've got these keys, and they open things. They open doors, and they open blessings, and they open into the kingdom of heaven. And it's just incredible, all of these things that we have. Now, if we had those keys and we never used them, it'd be such a waste and we'd be missing out. So understanding covenants is a bit like understanding what these keys do. Um, so you have a house, you own it, you have these keys. So let me tell you another aspect of this. So it's so easy. That's how the gospel is easy. We have the key, we open the door, we live in this house. But there's something behind the scenes that is so quite hard to understand, and that's the legal side of things and the covenant side of things is what I'm trying to explain. That there's all this legal principles of how you have to have the council permission, you have to have signed documents, you have to have the government documents, the deeds, you have to have the bank documents. All of these things are sort of in the background, and you can read them all with the fine print if you want to, but you don't have to. So that's what the covenant is to me. You can just walk into the house with that key. All you need is the key. You've opened the door. You have it. You're in that house. You're in that covenant. But what we're going to do is have a look at the laws and the terms and conditions and see what we might be missing out on, because it might say, hey, you have access to the pool. And if you didn't know by reading in the terms of conditions that you had access to that pool, you'd be missing out on all those beautiful days of swimming if you didn't know you were allowed to. So, this is why reading the terms and conditions of the new covenant and understanding what they are is so fascinating to me, because all of these amazing blessings have been uncovered. So I know what I can have in that new covenant. And I may not even have them all yet. I think it's a constant discovery as well. I just have to move back. I'm just so close. Okay, so covenants. They're in the Bible. I don't know. The first one isn't really clearly described, which is the one that Adam made over the lamb in the Garden of Eden. I know that there's in Genesis, there's that they slaughtered an animal for the first time, blood was shed, and that animal died, and their skins covered them, their shame. And that is the sort of the principles of a blood covenant. And we don't really see it laid out step by step there because it's only in a couple of verses. But there's also a whole lot of blessings and curses listed out as well. And that's always part of a covenant, the terms and conditions. So let's look at a traditional blood covenant. And then we can see how the prodigal son was covenant parable, and David and Jonathan took a traditional blood covenant as well. So if there's any questions, I'd love for anyone to comment, or if Peter can comment,
Yeah.
it would be
You're feeling
great.
you're feeling like big
So I'm
screen, but
feeling a little
everyone's just
alone.
everyone's just listening and enjoying it.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, okay.
Fred
So,
Simmons has just written.
mhm,
Um, yeah, that's what the word is. The keys of knowledge, the keys to the kingdom.
yeah. Yes, the keys to the kingdom. And what we're just gonna look at is what all of those keys belong to. Um, yeah, so we can have more confidence in our position and our identity in the new covenant. There is so much confusion out there. I think a lot of traditional churches, they're holding on with one hand the old covenant and one hand the new covenant because it's not clear.
Mm,
So, what we're going to do today is make it so clear that we will know what a covenant is, and how the marriage covenant is a blood covenant, and the difference between the old and the new. So it may sound confusing now, but let's just go through the 9 steps of a traditional Hebrew blood covenant. Now, I think God invented the blood covenant. We don't know why, but I think it was because he wanted this superb parable, the ultimate parable, to cover everything in our lives, to point back to the cross. You'll see how it all fits in like a jigsaw, and it creates a beautiful picture in the end, when you take out these steps, and things will be very clear and plain after we
mm,
understand what these steps are. Um,
good.
So the Hebrew blood covenant, they did it all throughout the centuries, because we know that, because the prodigal son is a covenant story. So let's go through. Let's just picture the prodigal story in our minds, and we'll talk about the 9 steps of a traditional blood covenant. So here we go. Oh, the one thing I just wanted to say was that this blood covenant parable that God created for his own reasons is all through the centuries It's to modern times because it is in our modern marriage ceremony. There are the same vows, the same
Wow.
steps as in the Hebrew blood covenant. And I'll show you that. And also in Africa, even recently in the 1940s, we're talking about Livingston and Stanley. I don't know if you know about that missionary, the
Yeah.
famous missionary Livingston in Africa. So they knew about this covenant, and it's exactly the same blood covenant as they did in the Bible, as in the
Mhm.
Hebrew blood covenant. And this is so profound to me because I believe that God made this parable as a sign so that we would never forget what a covenant is, because in our society today, do we take oaths seriously? Do we take legal agreements seriously? No. We can get out of anything with a lawyer,
Uh,
right? So
yeah.
we don't understand what a blood covenant is, how serious it
Right. That's a
is.
good point.
But
Yeah.
a blood covenant is until death. It's so serious that you can't break it. This is what I want to say at the beginning, that to cut covenant means that you'll see at the steps that you've committed your life to this covenant.
Mm.
And this is how serious it is. And you can't get out of it. No lawyer can get you out of this covenant because it's such a strong oath. And I think by looking at it from that point of view too, that we can see how
Mhm.
serious God is in his covenant, because he will never, ever break it. So that's something for us to get our heads around, because we just think we can get out of anything these days, and it's so easy to break things. But this covenant is unbreakable. In Africa, if you were to break this covenant, you were as good as dead. You were dead. Even if you were still alive, your family would shun you. You'd be out of the village. You wouldn't be taken seriously ever again. So it's a serious, serious matter. So it's well documented, the African covenant and how sacred it is. I mean, I could use this as one of the examples. I mean, it is brilliant as well to see how Stanley went into a blood covenant. Okay, so I'm talking about it now, so I think I have to do it. So I'm going to add another covenant to the story. Okay, so here's a little, just a taste of what the covenant is. Stanley went to find Livingston. So Stanley was, and he wrote a book about this, he was a New York Times reporter. So this is recent. This is in the early 1900s, and the blood covenants in Africa were still being done. And it breaks my heart to think that when missionaries went over there, they may have said, this is a heathen ritual, when this is almost exact representation of a covenant. Okay, so it's even more precise than the marriage covenant. So here we go. So this is Stanley's story, and you can read the book about him doing this. But he came across a tribe. He was looking for Livingston, and he came across a warmongering tribe, a very warlike tribe. And he was scared. He couldn't fight them. He had a group in of soldiers with him, and he came across this tribe. So he was there and he didn't want to fight them, but his um his bearer, his what lead bearer said, "Why don't you cut covenant with this tribe and everything will work out? Instead of fighting them, why don't you cut a covenant with them?" So he said, "What on earth is a covenant? What do I have to do?" And they told Stanley it meant that you had to drink each other's blood. And Stanley was like horrified. He was horrified at that. And he thought, oh my gosh, there's no way I can do that. But then they said, but everything will work out. Just do it. Just do it. Because everything the chief has will be yours, and everything you have will be the chief's. So he thought, oh, hang on a minute. Okay, well, maybe I can do this. So this is what they did. There was a parley. Ooh, you like that? There was a parley of the chief and Stanley's men, and they agreed to the terms and conditions of this covenant. And they said, uh, they the chieftain questioned Stanley to see if his motives and standings and his ability to keep the covenant. And then they exchanged gifts. Okay, so Stanley gave a goat. The chief gave him a big spear with a beautiful, intricate design on it as a sign that they were in the covenant. So this is a beautiful thing because even when Stanley went to the edge of Africa, miles and miles away, when people saw that staff, they knew it was a covenant. They would bend over backwards to fulfill whatever he wanted. It's like he had the authority now. So basically, they worked out a deal. Now, this is what part of they worked out what was theirs and what they'd do so that they became brothers and they became joined. Now,
Mm.
what happened is they killed an animal, they put it in half, just like in the Bible. This is just like Abraham did. They
Mm.
cut a body of an animal in half. They walked around in the blood, and they said, "Look, if I am to break this covenant, may I be like this animal which is dead." So they walked past in a figure of eight. Then they came to stand to each other, and then they said, "I agree to the covenant." They dropped a little bit of blood in a cup of wine. They drank one little sip each. And in the incision, they put gunpowder to make a scar. Okay, so does this sound anything familiar? Is this sounding familiar to anything in the Bible about covenants? Okay, so here they were. So they rubbed their wrists together so their blood mingled, and now they were called blood brothers. And they were substitutes because they only had the bearer and the chief's son, but they were the substitute for the chiefs there in that agreement. So they said, "Come trade with Stanley. He's now our blood brother." They would never, ever hurt each other and that they would be protecting each other, etc., etc., etc. So I don't know if that sounds like a covenant to you, but just think about that. Now we're going to think about the prodigal son. Okay, let's think about the prodigal son and how he covenanted back into a relationship with his father. So he left the covenant, right? So you can leave covenants. I said that they were till the death. Often at times they were to the death. You might make a covenant that isn't, but sometimes they go over your death, past your death, and they
Mm.
carry on through your children. They
Wow.
carry on through your tribe, maybe. Okay. But mostly if you die, you don't have to honor that covenant anymore because you're dead and you can't. So you can choose to leave if you want to. I suppose you can break it, right? But there is one way that you can leave a covenant and get away with it. Do you know when that would be? When you can legally get away from a blood covenant
No, not counting
make
death.
your own.
Oh.
Make your own. When you can make your own. When you reach an age of understanding, which is when you're a young adult, you can go and choose to marry another. You leave your parents' covenant and you can go and choose to make your own covenants with another tribe or with whatever. So that's the only time you can leave a covenant, when
Mm.
you're leaving your parents' covenant and making another covenant. So remember, how old was Jesus when he made a covenant? Well, we haven't talked about that yet, but he was like 30, all right? Okay. So covenants are
Mm.
not for children, right? So we'll find out later that, when you make a covenant in the new covenant, you get baptized, etc. I'm giving away clues here. But that's why we don't baptize children, because they are not at an age of understanding, and they're covered by their family's covenant. Yeah.
Mm.
So we have to understand what covenants are and how deep they go and how much they cover, because otherwise we'd be like saying, God, is my baby covered under this covenant? If they die, are they going to be in heaven? How do I know? And you'd be like, oh, I don't know. Should I baptize? I don't know. But the beauty is, once you understand how these covenants work, you'll be fully assured that the children are covered under their parents' blood covenant until they reach an understanding and choose to leave and
Mm.
choose to go and make another one. So, as we see with the prodigal son, what did he do? He said, I am at the age where I want to go live my own life and I want to, you know, make my own covenants and go and party on.
Party, party.
So, so he went on and did his own thing. And then what happened? He decided, oh dear, you know what? My father had a really good covenant going on. I really like that. I wish I had never left, and I'm just going to go back and I'm just going to hang out. And but what did his father do? Instead of saying, you don't be a servant, I want you to be re-covenanted back into the family as a full son and heir. The only way you can do this is through a blood covenant. So you can imagine, what did the father do? Now, does anybody remember what the father did when the son came running out?
He was very accepting.
Yes, but what did he give him? Do you remember what he gave him?
Was it a new robe?
Yes. Okay. So this is the first step of a covenant process. It
Mm.
is, oh, okay. Yes. Well, what it's one of the first steps is the robe.
Mm.
So let me go. I put that as number 3, but yes. No, number 2. Uh, You exchange robes representing everything that you are. Okay, so it's a change. It's a sign of authority changing. So he gave him a ring as well, which is the stamp which you could speak on the father's behalf. You have the authority. Okay, so that's the first step, is the robe changing. In all covenants, there's that sort of exchange. And do you know what I think this is in the story of David and Jonathan, and you'll see that these steps are in the story of David and Jonathan. When they covenanted and they became blood brothers, they also made this covenant between their families forever. So, does anyone remember what David and Jonathan exchanged? I think it's written in their little story that's very quick and it really overlooks it. It's never really set out except for
Mm.
Abram. Abram, these covenant steps are set out very clearly, and then we can just infer that other people were doing it too. So they exchanged a belt. Now, what do you think a belt represents?
Is that like a ring?
No, the belt's different.
Circle?
I think the ring
Cycle of
is
life?
like the robe. The ring is like a robe and it's authority.
Mm.
The
Actually, Moto Sapien, I just noticed he said a little bit earlier that he gave the son the ring of authority over the estate, which is just what
Yeah,
you're
yeah, yeah,
saying.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. And then I don't know if they did this in the prodigal son, but David and Jonathan did it. They swap belts, and the belts represent armor because your sword is on your belt.
Oh,
It means a promise to protect and fight for the other person, right? You
right.
protect the other person and their family. So it's a sign of, we're together now, we're going to protect each other. So you can speak on each other's behalf, but you have the authority, you have the protection. Okay. So I think, so what happens is that I did the step 1, sorry, I missed that step. It's the cutting covenant, which is the animal is cut in half and you walk around that. It's
Right.
the death and rebirth process. So it's a celebration, it's a ceremony, like a marriage ceremony, it's a feast. And remember, they did that in the prodigal son with the fatted calf. They would have cut the calf and done this in the presence of witnesses, in the presence of the community. Remember, they had a feast for the whole town. They recovenanted him back into the family. So they would have used that animal as the basically the sacrifice to cut covenant. Now, so with the prodigal son, they in a traditional um, covenant. I said the step five. I'm just randomly calling them step five. It may not be. I'm just making it
Yeah.
just easy to understand. And they exchanged
Bullet
names.
points.
Yeah, bullet points. You
Interchangeable.
exchanged names. So yeah, the prodigal son became a son again.
Mm.
And yeah, so a scar is usually made in the traditional one. There's a scar so you can see it
Mm.
forever. And then there's a meal. You eat a meal together of the sacrificed animal. You
So, he,
feast.
so he's the son
Yeah,
again, but under new
right.
conditions.
Under new conditions, yeah, possibly they would have made the terms and conditions again as that covenant.
Well,
But that was to say to the
right.
community that my son is now acting on my behalf again,
Right.
and he
Okay.
can go and do deals with you. He is just like
That's
my
a
son again. And he
restoration
would have,
then.
it is a restoration, and he would have been entitled to all the inheritance again.
Right. Which
Now we
angered the
can,
brother.
yes, it did.
That's
We
a
can
side
talk about
thing.
all of that again. But you can, when you look at the story through the eyes of the covenant, it is just mind blowing that then you can see the difference between the brother as the old covenant and the prodigal son as the new covenant. But we won't go into that this time. That would be a whole new
That's for a
story.
PowerPoint presentation down the track.
That's for another very, very complicated one later on. That's amazing too. Okay, so there you go. There's the traditional blood covenant that they had in Africa. Now remember how David and Jonathan did a blood covenant, and they fought for each other, even though Saul wanted to kill David and David wanted to kill. So actually, I think in the end, there was all of Saul's family was killed. But because David and Jonathan had this covenant, David had promised Jonathan to look after his family forever. So that's why Mephibosheth, the story is so beautiful because really he thought he was going to be killed and he was hiding in a cave and David came to him and said, "No, I actually swore a promise to Jonathan that I would invite you to my table and you would be my family forever and you'd have a seat at my table forever." So he honored his covenant. Because Jonathan had died, he honored his remaining family with that covenant. That's how strong the covenant was. So he would be just part of his family. So Mephibosheth became a royal prince because of the covenant. So that's exciting. So now let's talk about. Is there any other questions with that? Is it so confusing?
There's,
Have I confused
no,
everybody?
there's a couple of comments, and I think Bob, you're good,
Yeah.
is talking about where we're going to be going later. He's
Mm-hmm.
talking about the covenant now. We do not go through a covenant, but come directly to Christ. And what you're
Yeah,
doing
we
is
don't.
out,
Yeah.
outlining where the covenants come from, what they are today,
Yeah, and
how
where
they
the
change.
yes, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, we actually um don't cut covenant with any. We don't do that. I'll show you how
But it's coming.
how we don't do that in the new covenant
eh,
because we got a yeah,
a
somebody did
different
it
thing.
for
Yeah,
us.
yeah.
Okay? So
So Bob, you're
we
good. You're
just
right.
join in,
And
right? We're
we're
like
just going to
Mephibosheth. We
look
just
back.
join in. This is the story of the new covenant. We are like Mephibosheth and we just join in.
Mm,
Okay?
yeah, yeah.
It's a little bit like that. It's a
Okay.
little bit like that. Okay, so I'm
And
going to talk about the old covenant, Jesus, and then the new covenant. Okay, I might talk about marriage next, okay? I might talk
yeah,
about marriage next first. how that's also a blood covenant. That might be interesting for people too. Would that be all right?
Yes, sounds good. And then Moto
Okay.
Sapiens got a good question, but I think it'll relate to a bit later on. So we'll leave that for the
Okay, sure.
moment.
Keep that one. Okay, so obviously you can see that I haven't prepared this at all. And I'm so sorry, but I don't have
No,
the
this is
energy to prepare.
the Good News
Just go
Fellowship.
off the cuff.
This is the Good News Fellowship where we're just gathering and we're conversing
Yeah.
and we're dialoguing.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll bring up Moto Sapiens one now because it is
Hmm.
pertaining to this particular covenant. And he's just said he's not trying to be
Okay. Oh no,
but I
that's
don't
all right.
see the father making a covenant agreement with the son. The father never cut the son off, but was always looking up the road for the son, the wayward
Right.
son.
Right. He didn't, but the son separated. The son left the
Yes,
covenant. The
yes,
son chose. And at an age of understanding, you're allowed to leave and go and get married. That's a new covenant. That's what I'm going to talk about now. You can leave, cleave to the new covenant of marriage from your family covenant.
yeah.
So,
And I think then
yeah,
Motor Sapien also adds what you've just said. He restored to the same position that he'd always
yeah,
had with the father,
right.
but
Yes.
you're speaking it from
Yeah.
the son's perspective.
Right. Yeah.
Mm.
Sorry if that was confusing. But yes, the father was just, yeah. So, and that gives us hope if we ever left a covenant that we can come back to
Ah,
be in
yeah,
exactly the same place as we
right,
were before. So
right.
this is a story of hope. The prodigal son is a story of no matter where you are, how many times you might have broken a covenant, and you can come back to God and he will just restore you with open arms. Yeah. So we don't have to be afraid. Okay.
That's good.
Now, marriage. Marriage. Okay. So let's start. Did you ever think that marriage was a covenant or a blood covenant?
I've never really understood blood covenants, but I've always thought of it as a covenant.
Yeah, yeah.
But maybe that's
Yes,
because I
and
got married a
and
little bit later in life, and so I'd pondered a few things before I did.
mm,
Maybe when I was young,
yeah,
I had no
I
idea.
mean, right, right, right. But I just find it absolutely fascinating that how could we have kept a ceremony for 2000 years, 3000 years that still has, because God invented this. This is a God invented this, and I don't understand how it could be in our society, but it's just amazing. I mean, I'm just blown away that even people that have no idea about covenants are making a covenant. And it's beautiful. That's why the marriage ceremony is so beautiful, because it's a covenant and it's so deep. Okay.
It's almost
Anyway.
instinct wired into us,
Yeah,
into
it
our
is.
DNA.
Yeah. Yes. It's profound and it's mysterious and it's mystical and it's just amazing. So anyway, so the step one, you have two representatives, tribe, family, or individual. Okay, so with the marriage, you're going to have two individuals of a age of understanding. They leave their parents, separate from the family covenant, and become a new family. So they commit to this covenant, to death do us part. Um, let's not get into this. Traditionally, it's to death do us part. And if you, yeah, we'll go into that later on how you can break it. But anyway, okay. So exchange, marriage. So this is the robe step, exchanging robes. So when you get married, you exchange your old life for a new one, and each has the authority to act on the other's behalf. The belts, let's go the step of the belts. You promise to protect each other and you fight for each other. You're on each other's side. Um, Step four, when you're cutting the covenant, I have always just thought that it could be the beauty of sex and the profound symbol that two virgins on their wedding night, and the promise to not commit adultery with another, because when you commit adultery with another, you're recovenanting to them. So that means you'd break the old covenant. So that's why adultery was so profound. You always
Mm.
wonder, why is that such a bad sin? Why is this one bad? I think it is because it is the yeah, it's just the imagery or the understanding that it's about a covenant and it's about that you're breaking a covenant. And I think that's the way to break a marriage covenant, is to commit adultery because you've recovenanted with another. Or if you die, then that's the end of that covenant, right? It's the
Mm.
end of it. And you're free to marry somebody else. Yeah. So
Cindy
that's sort
Lou
of
points
an
out that,
understanding
yeah,
there.
marriage is a covenant, not a contract, and that
Yeah.
why it runs so deep.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. Yeah. So so yeah, it's a very symbolic. I think all of these covenants, they're so symbolic to mean something much deeper. So the step 5 is the name. You exchange names. So in the old days, I think they used to combine their names together, but now the woman takes the man's name. I don't know why, that's not very fair. But anyway, but they would make a new name for themselves. Yep. So they exchange names. And then there's a scar. Now, the scar might be something about sex, or it may be because you're no longer a virgin. I don't know. But in today's society, some people wear a wedding band to say, like, I'm married or taken or I'm in covenant. I mean, that's just whatever, a modern thing. I don't know. But number 7, there's terms and there's the contract is made up. The covenant terms are read and agreed upon. So it's sort of like the last will and testament. That's what the terms of the covenant are. So so in a marriage, you vow to yeah, what is it? I don't know. I've never been married. Uh, what you promise that all your wealth, assets, liabilities, children, and property will be combined as one. You love, honor, cherish, be faithful in sickness and in health, whatever they are. Um, yeah, all of those vows and conditions. Yeah, there's some legal and there's some that you vow as well. So step 8 is a meal, and you traditionally eat the meal of the sacrificed animal, but in the marriage, it's the wedding cake and the wine. Does that remind you of something
Mm.
else? Oh, later on, we'll just talk about that. But you eat the wedding cake and you're saying, I am in you and you are in me. I don't think we've ever really explored why the wedding cake is there. So you would say, oh, we have a wedding cake. But do you understand that why it's there?
No.
It's the substitute for the animal, really, in a covenant.
Oh, and you're cutting, of course.
You're
Wow.
cutting
Yes, of
the
course.
cake, you're cutting the
And
cake. You think, why did we do this? Why
yes,
do we do this? With a sword, you cut
the
the cake,
sacrifice.
you feed each other. Why
Never
do we
thought
feed
about
each
that.
other? But if you go back far
Mm.
enough, you'll say, it's because I'm in you and you're in me. Like,
Mm.
that's, and the wine, drink, you feed each other the
Mm.
wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Okay, so this is gets more fascinating and more fascinating and more fascinating the more we line all these covenants up. So then you can plant some of these covenants. After a covenant, they plant a tree that reminds them of it. But I don't know. In a marriage, you might have a family tree. I don't know about that. That's an extra step I threw in there. Okay. Okay, so that's the marriage one. Um, the children are in that covenant. So in the Bible, they talk about blessings to the third and fourth generation, that sort of thing. And in the New Testament, they talked about when someone was baptized, him and his family were baptized. Um, in a covenant, your family is in the covenant. It is to cover the unborn and the born. The unborn, the ones that haven't been born yet, the ones that will be born. So covenants are family based. And I don't think we quite understand that in today's society. We're so individualistic. And we think that children, oh no, they have to get baptized at like 7 or 6 or 5 or 8 or 10, but they don't have to because they are fully under the covenant with their parents. And I think we could explore that even more at another time. But that's just something for you to think about and dwell on right now. That these covenants are to make us so assured and so confident and so feel like we so belong. Um, I just want to say that when you have a child and then you have adoption, these blood covenants. Okay, so just sorry, stop for a second. There are covenants in today's society that are blood covenants, and that is in the mafia. So they still do blood covenants. And one of the things that they say, they do all of these steps. In fact, they actually cut blood and they make blood and they drink blood. Okay, so they do covenant steps as well. They cannot break this covenant. They know it's till death. But when they become a covenant family with these blood brothers, the blood brothers are now above their real family. So you know how there's a saying that says blood is thicker than water? Do you know what that stands for?
Well, I've always taken it as genetically family kin deeper, but I'm
Yeah,
sure
no,
I'm
it's
wrong.
the opposite. It is the opposite. And I got
Wow.
blown away. I just figured this out. Okay, or just not figured it out, read about it. It says the full saying is the blood of the covenant is stronger than the water of your blood relatives.
Oh.
I need to find the full statement. I can't remember it off by heart. I'm so sorry, but it means the blood of the covenant is stronger than any family bond that you will have. If you take a family covenant, so if
Wow.
you really covenant to your wife or your partner, you're really leaving behind the other covenant. They're secondary now. So um
Mm.
if you are accepted into a blood covenant, it's higher, you're closer than your family. So if
Mm.
somebody wants to look up the real correct saying of the blood is thicker than water, it means the blood of a cut covenant blood, a full blood covenant is thicker
Mm.
than your family. So that's profound. Okay, so
Mm. Barb T writes, water of the womb.
there
Mm.
you go. I knew it was something like that. So that's fascinating, isn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely fascinating.
And yeah, you're no longer a part of your family of origin.
Right, right, right. Yeah. The legal covenant is now to this next one. So,
Mm. Mm.
yeah, but I think you can be in multiple covenants at once. I'm just, but this blood covenant is like specific, Anyway, anyway, one at a time's good enough for me. But there are situations where there might be different covenants. Like I'm talking about tribal ones. They might have covenants with this tribe and that tribe. So I'm just, anyway. So where were we up to? Have we finished marriage? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So
nice.
how much longer have we got? Because
We've
I've
got
got to do
another
3 more.
we've got another
We've
15 minutes.
10 minutes. There is no way I'm going to get through the old
Well, what
covenant, how
what
Jesus fulfilled it,
um
and the new covenant
what I
in this time.
suggested what I suggested off air was that this is a because I
Yeah.
can see some
Mm.
fascinating conversational things going on off to the side here that
Yeah.
and
Okay.
whenever we talk about the covenants in any of the interviews, this is what happens.
Yeah.
There's a huge amount
Yeah.
of a flurry of comments and thoughts, and that
Okay.
and everyone
Okay.
seems to grasp it or not grasp it or have big differences or minor differences. But what I suggested off air is that we'll get you back for a proper so this is a taste of the covenants today. It's part of our
Yeah,
Good
okay.
News Fellowship,
Mhm.
and we'll get you back
Yeah.
with the PowerPoint, and you can go through each one. We'll bring it on the screen, and that gives us a much more time to unpack it. So maybe just quickly
Yeah.
go over the 3, just like a real just a I
Yeah.
mean, we're just touching
Okay,
on these
yeah.
things.
I'll
Yeah.
just do generalized. What we can do next time is look at how those 9 steps are in each of the old covenant and how they're different in the new covenant and how Jesus fulfilled each of those steps. The beautiful thing is, just as a just to honor this understanding of blood covenants is so profound, but it's so beautiful at the same time. I remember I went through a real phase where I could not stand the mention of blood in any church service. I didn't understand it. I just thought it was horrible and awful. And whenever they sung about the power in the
Power in
blood,
the
I
blood.
would just have to walk out of church because I thought it was awful and I couldn't understand it.
Mm.
And it was just, I just didn't get it. And when I came to this understanding of how when I started looking at everything through those 9 steps, it all fell into place and it took on a completely different meaning. Because as we'll find out, that we get adopted into the new covenant. See, I was talking about blood is thicker than water. That adoption, we're not just adopted as like, oh, we're the adopted child, we're the second class child. The adopted child, if you're in blood covenant, if you're greater than blood, the natural ones. What I'm trying I'm not trying to make a comparison here, and we were all the same, but God doesn't have words to use to show us how much he loves us and how much he's committed to it and how much he wants to give to us. So he's had to use these analogies
It's more
and
reassuring, I think.
once
Yeah.
we get it,
Mhm.
it's profound.
Mm.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
someone who is adopted does often feel, "Am I
Yes.
as special?" So it's not
Right.
lessening the birth
Right.
blood person. It's saying,
Right.
"No, no,
Right.
you are as special."
Yes. That's it. Because often we'd read a text that says, "Oh, you're the adopted child," where is it? Okay, so let's look at Romans 8:14-17. It says, "But we have received the spirit of adoption, whereby we cry, Abba, Father. The Spirit itself bears witness within our spirit that we are the children of God, and if children, then heirs of God, and joint heirs with Christ." So even though it says adoption, and we may think, oh, adopted, oh, I don't know, it's a bit second class, but he's trying to say that, hang on a minute, we are joint heirs, co heirs with all the other people in the family of God and joint heirs with Christ, who is the firstborn adopted into this, joint heirs with Christ. I mean, this is this is just profound.
And if people grasp that, the serious
Yeah.
beauty of that, if you can combine
Yeah.
serious and beauty, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's profound, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
equal to Christ.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. Just like the prodigal son came back in and he's now a co-heir again, just as he was before. And this is so incredible. So let me just explain a little bit of information about that people get really confused about when they look at the old covenant and the new covenant. It's very, very confusing to some people what the old covenant is and what the new covenant is. I read a text in the Bible and I can't find where it is, but it says the Mosaic was added to the Abrahamic to make the old covenant. Now, people like Miles would disagree with me with that, but the old covenant, I believe firmly, is Adam, where the sin was first introduced, the Mosaic and the Abrahamic covenants all added together under the umbrella of the Old Covenant. Because that was fulfilled on the cross. And I can explain how Jesus went through every single one of those steps to fulfill the Old Covenant. And now, with his body as the sacrifice, and he died because the Old Covenant had to be fulfilled. I don't know how this is confusing everybody, but yeah. So he fulfilled the Old Covenant fully and completely. And then we need to stop, draw a line, and then say, but then his blood over his dead body, and that blood made a new covenant. Do you understand why he had to have blood and why he had the sacrifice and why he's called the Lamb? Is because he made a new covenant. He made a new covenant with God. And now some people might think, oh, the new covenant, we make the covenant with God. We're making a covenant, but we're not. We're not making a covenant. The covenant has been made at the cross over his blood. Jesus and God made that covenant. We do not make that covenant. We get adopted into that covenant because Jesus was representing us. So we are only able to join it if we want to. So that's why we just have to believe to join the new covenant. You just have to want to. I don't know if that's
And is the new, so just I remember having Frank Merendino on, and he had a really good way of explaining the purpose of the Christ alive and post Christ's death covenants, and how there is an overlap, but also how that now, and if Frank's watching, I'm sorry if I'm wrong here, but now that there's this new covenant post Christ, it takes on, it almost makes the covenants fall into the background a little bit. So that, like, like in a marriage, you're not sitting there constantly going, "We've made a covenant. Did we breach the covenant today? What can we do to keep the covenant going properly?" That once
right.
you've
Right.
understood
You
this
don't think about
new
it.
relationship, it
Mm-hmm.
suddenly takes a back seat while still
Right.
being marvelously important, of course, because it's
Right.
part of our DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Is there, so yeah, to comment on that, but also, is
Yep.
there a, what's different for us as people living?
Oh.
So you've got your Gentiles and your Jews. So let's
Yep. Yep.
imagine you're a
Mm-hmm.
Jew. So this is harder to explain than I
Hang
thought.
on.
But
Hang on.
if
Let me finish. Let me finish the first
yep,
comment, and then we
sure,
can go into that one because I know exactly what you mean.
yep,
Um, so basically, this is how simple it is. This is why I said it's simple, so simple, even a 3-year-old can understand. All you need to know for the new covenant is this is all we have to do is believe. We get this key, and the key gives us access to heaven, to all of these blessings. And I mean, it all blessings rain down. And when I just took a whole chat on all the blessings we receive in the new covenant, it is incredible all that we receive. And that could take a
mm.
whole thing.
So
So all we get is blessings. And we don't have to know all the legal. We don't have to know all these steps. We don't have to know anything about this, any of the theology behind it. And that's why theologians can get into all the nitty-gritty and get confused over it. But it's so simple. All you get is the key and you get the blessings. That's it. That's how simple it is. And I can prove that through going to all these steps.
and in the
If
old
people
covenant,
think, oh, hang on a minute, are
in
we
the old,
still trying to do old covenant stuff?
but in
Yep.
the old covenant, did they still get blessings by
Yes, there were
connecting to
blessings
it?
and curses. Yeah, for sure. So remember how they're in the wilderness wandering around, and Jesus and God gave them the light, and he gave them what they asked for, the manna. Sometimes he gave them quails. Sometimes so there's blessings and there's curses.
So what's the difference
He became the
now?
curse for us. All the curses have ended. There is no curses
Ah,
anymore.
right.
There is no, I don't want to say this. There's no sin anymore. That could totally confuse everybody else, but we are no longer under the law. We are under relationship. So I could make a list of all these thousand things comparing what we are now, like um like life on this side, death on the other. Slaves under this side, the law under the new covenant, we're in freedom. So we could do all
Right.
this comparison
That's
about
a
under
good
the
analogy.
old and under the new.
Slaves. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a priest that died under this side of the old covenant, but there is a priest that will never die. He's the guarantor of a better covenant, an everlasting permanent covenant. There's a veil under this side. Under this side, there is no veil. With, the veil is torn. Under this side, there's no forgiveness. Under
Mm.
this side, there is forgiveness. So there is so many
I'm
differences.
glad you've
That
given those
so
examples. That's great. Mm.
there's guilt, there's forgiveness, there's condemnation, there's judgment, there's regret, there's shame under this, but there is blessing, there is desire, there is no longer a slave to sin. We are free. There's all of these comparisons about the old and the new. And that's what gives us the freedom once we can understand that. And that's
So
powerful,
in the old
absolutely powerful.
yeah. So in the old covenant, if I was sinning,
Mm-hmm.
there's um, there's a certain amount of effort required to not sin to gain a certain
Mm,
standing, and also if I sin, there's curses. Whereas
yeah.
in the new covenant, those actions that are considered sinful still
Uh,
might occur, but is it now the
yep.
shift is that now they are no longer
They're no
um,
longer sin. It's relationship. It damages relationship with
right,
God. It
right? It
damages relationship with
damages
each other.
relationship with
And
God
it's
and with
all
each
about
other.
relationship
Yeah,
and
right,
yourself. Now, when Jesus said, this is
right.
all you need to do, which you don't even have to do, there is nothing we have to do under the new covenant because we are not the testators. No, we're not what are they called? The two people making the covenant. They have to agree to the terms and conditions. But
Mm,
Jesus and God already agreed at the cross. They made the new covenant. They made that. All we do is join in. We do not have to do a single thing. We did not agree to love and obey and cherish till death do us part. We did not do any of the vowing. We did not do any of that. We just join in. So nothing we do, we
mm,
can't work for it because we didn't even agree. We can't even agree.
mm,
We weren't the people agreeing.
right,
It's like an adopted child into your, do they have to do anything to be a son or daughter? They
right,
do nothing to be the son and daughter. And
right.
whatever they do, good or bad, they do
They're
not
still in the
ever
family.
stop being your son or daughter.
Yes, yes. So we're
That's
the
exactly
adopted.
what it's like.
I think
So all it is about relationship under the new covenant. When Jesus said, these are the commands that I give you, love yourself. Why did he say love yourself?
mm,
Because if you don't love yourself, you can't love anybody else.
mm,
He had the he had the foresight to understand that we'll all need therapy from trauma in this day and age, and we'll need to love ourselves first, and then we can accept love from God
mm,
and others, and we
mm.
can give it. So people think that might be selfish, but you have to love yourself first.
Why?
Because you have to have that capacity, and that's a beautiful thing, and healing. And this is what the new covenant is about. It's about healing, growing in capacity to love.
Why do
There's no
you
judgment on it. There's no, you did this, you did that. No, it's all a relationship.
why do you think um, the that like the whole Jesus new covenant thing? Why didn't God implement that like a few days after the apple and the
Well,
fall? Like it, why allow people
why
for
didn't
so
he?
long
Why
for
didn't
so long to
he?
go through this kind of no, you've got to work to get my
No.
love. You've got no, no, no. If you sin, I'm going to curse you, and if you sin, you're not coming into my house. Like to me, it's like a Jesus wasn't rectifying
Hmm.
God's covenant idea. He was
Yeah.
rectifying people's
Yeah.
perception of God's covenant idea.
I don't know why he didn't. All I know is that the old covenant way of doing the laws was all to show up a mirror that you needed, that you couldn't do it on your own, that it was impossible to be good enough for God. I don't know why it took so long. But if we have that, if we still have that mentality under the new covenant, we're not fully grasping what the new covenant is. We're not living. Okay. So, yeah. So I'll have whenever you want me to do a little final wrap up, I can.
Yeah,
I
let's
don't
do a
know
wrap
how
up.
long you want me to
Just
do.
we've only
If there's
got
any other questions or if
and
you've got anything else.
those watching, you know me, I'd just sit here for another 3 hours, no problem. But I have a very important appointment I have to get to, so I have to leave in about 5 minutes at the most.
Okay.
But just to quickly
Okay.
summarize some of the comments, and then you wrap up.
Mm,
Bob
okay.
Good has been saying some incredible things, and he's saying just faith in the burial and resurrection is required, not a covenant insight in today's gospel that saves.
Yes.
And I
Yes, you don't
agree.
have to
And
know
you're
any of this.
a-
All you have to know is to believe to get that key.
and
That's it.
and
Yeah.
Max Ranter writes, and that's the whole SDA community doesn't understand, and so therefore,
Yeah.
if you're in a
Yep.
community where people aren't understanding it, that's why you have to bring the covenants to the fore to try and
Yeah.
explain it.
Yeah.
So there's a whole
Yeah.
lot of other things
Yeah.
I'd love to go into myself.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And oh, look, I'm going to bring this up because it's a compliment. Motor say, Peter, that's one of the
Oh.
most profound theological points I've ever heard you make. I'm not sure which one it was, but thank you.
Which one? Yeah.
Can you
Somebody write that
tell me
down.
which it was quickly? Um, but yeah, and look, we will get you back in just 2 weeks, and we'll do a full PowerPoint, and want to invite everyone back. Bop, you're good. You've got great things to say. Motor Sapien, Fred, Barb T. There's just so many people saying some really insightful stuff. Leanne has written, I always say that you must love yourself first. And
Yeah.
there's all
Took me
sorts of great
years to
things
understand
coming
that.
in. And because on the Good News Fellowship hour, we like to keep it to an hour, just mainly because it's a really great conversation starter. We get community together, and I am working on ways to have uh, a bit of a follow-up Zoom conversation afterwards that won't be live. So that's hopefully going to kick off soon as well. So I'm going to let you wrap it up. Motor Sapien, tell me what my profound theological statement was. And Barb T has just mentioned that she's learning so much. This is fantastic. Um, Moto might have been talking about why didn't God do it earlier? Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
I think that's what he's referring to. And my quick thought on that is that I think, and I totally, it's
Oh.
just because you've inspired me on this now, Nicki. I'm
Mm.
wondering if we looked at a new angle here, that maybe
Mhm.
Christ, maybe there was no reason for the old covenant. It was a total misunderstanding, and Jesus was rectifying the misunderstanding and pointing to what truly is God's love, which was there all along. So anyway, that's a whole other conversation. Um,
Yeah. I just what came to mind was when Jesus was on the cross, he says, "For the joy set before me," and for some unknown reason, we are his joy. And if you read that, why he did all of this stuff, it's because we bring him joy, and it's really hard for us to comprehend that.
mm,
But there's two incredible texts in the Bible where he says, "I put up with this suffering, and I'd do it all again for you, for the joy that you'll bring me. So I don't understand that, but that's pretty special.
Mm.
Um, and it's really, really, really touching. But yeah, I don't know why he didn't do it earlier. Maybe he was
Well,
waiting for you, Peter. He's waiting
Fred
for you to be
Fred
born.
Fred wrote, God had to let sin bear full fruit to show mankind its evil, destructive force,
Oh,
and that by
I
allowing it
know.
out, it shows his great love. He also adds great lesson today, Nicki. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you. I just want to say that in the next one, we'll see how the old covenant was fulfilled by Jesus in all those steps. So three things: the steps for the old covenant, the steps of the new covenant, and the steps of Jesus fulfilling those. It's very fascinating. I found it fascinating anyway. I don't know if you will, but when we look at the
Yeah.
new covenant, so many things will fall into place. Well, they did for me anyway. So I hope that maybe
Yeah.
some people will get a wow out of it.
Well,
So
it's
so
shining from
yeah.
you, so that's good.
So I'll have a little I can finish
Bit of
with prayer
PowerPoint.
if you want, and thank you all for listening.
Yes, thank
And
you,
I'll
everybody.
engage in some comments, but we haven't finished. Just know that we've only just opened up the book and we can't talk about old and new yet because we haven't got there yet. So let's
Yeah.
hold it back.
Kelly Byrne writes, trigger warning, today's interview could really help you find yourself.
Oh, thanks.
Look, great
Yeah.
conversation and really, really interesting, raising so many questions, and that's fantastic. So let's get you back in a couple of weeks, full PowerPoint, everybody.
Okay.
Um, no, Motor Sapien says, did I misunderstand you? No, not at all. I think I'll hold on to I said a good thing. So yeah, thank you everybody. We'll see you all again next week, and we will be back with Nicki soon. And keep it going in the conversations. I think Nicki might go over to the Facebook group and
Yeah, I'll go to
continue
the
with the
Facebook group.
conversation there. And those in
Okay.
YouTube, if you're not in the Facebook group, go and join.
Yeah.
Just seek SDAQ&A in the Facebook and find us. Wrap it up for us, Nicki, and with the prayer,
Okay.
and we'll see you soon.
Well, let me tell you that those keys are also the keys to the kingdom. And when I figured out that that key not only unlocked on earth here the new covenant and all its blessings, but it unlocked the kingdom now, that just is like mind blowing. So let's just be prepared to get more and more insight. So let's pray to finish up. God, thank you for today. I know that you're in the covenants and that you made it for your own uh, way of helping us see in different ways and through parables and through analogies your incredible, incredible love for us. And those covenants are enduring throughout cultures and throughout our daily lives that we had no idea about. So, Lord, I just pray that you'll help us see in new ways. And I just want to finish with reading the Lord's Prayer because it is also just a celebration of the covenant. Our Father in heaven, let your name remain holy. Bring about your kingdom. Manifest your will here on earth as it is in heaven. Give us each day that day's bread, no more, no less. And forgive us our debts as we forgive those who owe us something. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. And but let your kingdom be, and let it be powerful and glorious forever and ever. Amen. Thank you.
A lot of people are saying, why are you wrapping it up?
I
Nicki's going to
know.
be in the Facebook group right now, underneath this, not underneath the promo, underneath the actual live. When it finishes, she'll be there. So
Yeah.
if you want to keep
Yeah.
chatting with her, and
Yeah.
I'm the
Any
one having a rush
questions?
today. I apologize. What Moto Sapien has said, I'd love to unpack. And thank you, Nicki. Uh,
Yeah, it's
there
lovely.
are, go over there now, and you can have a conversation with Nicki in real time on Facebook. See you, everybody.
Blessings.